Welcome to today's deep dive. So, if you are sitting there right now with a framed piece of paper on your wall that cost you or, your parents tens of thousands of dollars,
Right.
or if you're navigating a career that just feels like it's shifting under your feet every single week, we really need to have a conversation today.
Yeah, we absolutely do. It's highly relevant right now.
Exactly. Today, we are unpacking a really provocative concept from our recent research. It's broadly categorized as the death of the traditional degree.
Which is a heavy premise. I mean, it's huge.
Oh, massive.
But it's a crucial one to explore. The mission for our discussion today is to understand exactly why the four-year university system, which, let's be honest, has been this unquestioned, almost sacred pillar of security for a century, why that system is fundamentally fracturing. And more importantly, what this seismic shift means for you, the listener, as you try to build a resilient career today.
Right, in an environment where the old rules just, they simply don't apply anymore.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's unpack this. The notes we've been reviewing present this incredibly vivid, honestly striking image. So picture a luxurious, gold-framed university diploma hanging on an office wall.
The classic status symbol.
Right, but suddenly a crack forms in the glass, and neon code starts pouring out of the fracture. It just overwrites the prestigious university seal, erases the graduate's name, and leaves behind what is essentially a high-end $100,000 paperweight.
Wow.
Yeah, it's quite the visual, and it really captures the baseline anxiety that a lot of professionals are feeling right now.
It captures it perfectly because for an entire century, society bought into this very specific manufactured narrative. The prevailing wisdom was, 4 years of sitting dutifully in a lecture hall equals a lifetime of professional security. You took on the debt, you put in the time, you received the paper.
And you were safe.
Exactly. You were validated. But that premise relied entirely on a world that moved at a predictable, manageable pace.
Which brings us to this concept from the source material, the half-life of knowledge.
Right. This is key.
Because in the past, what you learned in your 20s could reasonably carry you all the way to retirement. You just needed a few minor updates along the way.
Yeah. A seminar here, a workshop there.
Exactly. But our research illustrates a drastically different reality for the modern student. Take someone who started a computer science degree in 2022.
Which sounds like the ultimate safe bet, right? Future-proof.
You would think so. But by the time that exact same student reached their junior year, the foundational coding languages they spent their freshman and sophomore years meticulously memorizing,
Oh, man.
they were already being written exponentially faster by AI agents.
And what's fascinating and kind of terrifying here is the economic implication of that reality. We're reaching a point where people aren't actually paying for an education in the traditional sense anymore.
What are they paying for them?
They're paying for a map to a world that no longer exists.
A map to a world that no longer exists. That is wow.
Right. If the terrain completely changes while you are still making student loan payments on the map, you're going to end up completely lost.
Yeah.
That the fundamental value proposition of a university degree is just being hollowed out by the sheer velocity of technological change.
Okay, let's make this concrete. Because this transition from the old world to the new world isn't just some theoretical academic debate, right? It changes how we actually operate on a Tuesday morning.
Absolutely.
Our sources set up this really sharp contrast between two different types of learners operating in this new landscape. We have student A, representing the traditional paradigm, and student B, representing a fundamentally new approach. Let's look at student A first.
Sure. So student A is someone who plays strictly by the legacy rules. This is the individual who relies heavily on memorization, who sits down and grinds out the massive essays,
Right.
someone who views their primary function as being an information storage unit.
And the modern workplace is incredibly hostile to information storage units.
Highly hostile.
I think anyone who's been through the traditional school system knows exactly what it feels like to be an information storage unit.
Oh, definitely.
You cram all these facts into your head for a final exam, and then you just dump them a week later. And the text gives us a very relatable, highly painful example of student A in action in the real world.
The Python error.
Yes. Student A encounters a complex Python programming error and spends 6 grueling hours struggling with it, just banging their head against the desk, scrolling endlessly through forums, completely stalled out on one tiny roadblock.
Which is a scenario almost every professional has experienced at some point.
Right.
But if we connect this to the bigger picture, student B completely rejects the premise of that struggle.
How so?
Well, student B views information not as a precious resource to be perfectly memorized, but merely as a cheap commodity. Because the information is instantly accessible, she doesn't bother storing it internally.
She orchestrates it.
Exactly. She uses an AI debugging tool to analyze and fix that exact same Python error in about 6 seconds.
Okay, hold on. I have to play devil's advocate here for a second.
Go for it.
Is there not inherent value in that 6-hour struggle? I mean, if student B just pushes a button and fixes the code in 6 seconds, does she actually understand the architecture of what she's building? Aren't we just creating a generation of professionals who have no idea how their own tools work?
That's a very common pushback, and it raises an important question. But the distinction the source makes is between struggling with architecture versus struggling with syntax.
Okay, break that down.
Student A spent 6 hours fighting with a missing comma or a broken loop. That is syntax. It's purely mechanical.
Right.
Student B skips that mechanical struggle, and by bypassing the syntax, she frees up her cognitive load to focus entirely on the architecture.
And here's where it gets really interesting for me. It's not just about the fact that she bypassed the error. It's about what she does with the massive surplus of time she just generated, because student B now has 5 hours and 59 minutes left over. And rather than taking the rest of the day off to watch TV, she spends that time studying high-level strategy and user experience design.
She is expanding her scope while student A is still trapped in the weeds.
Exactly. And that fundamentally alters her value in the marketplace. Consider the ultimate reality check for you as a listener. When both of these students enter the job market, who does a hiring manager actually want?
It's not a tough choice.
Right. The modern executive does not hire the person who has the encyclopedia memorized. They hire the person who can deliver the fully executed solution before the morning coffee gets cold.
Exactly. Institutional authority relying on the prestige of the university name printed on your resume is rapidly depreciating. Individual competence demonstrated in real time is really the only currency left.
So if institutional authority is dying out, how do we actually build that individual competence? If we aren't spending 4 years hoarding information in a lecture hall, what replaces that model?
This brings us to a massive paradigm shift. It's the move from what the sources call just-in-case learning to just-in-time learning.
Okay, just in case versus just in time.
Right. The just-in-case model is the entire foundation of the traditional degree. You are forced to sit in a classroom and absorb a massive, generalized breadth of information just in case you might need it a decade down the line in some boardroom.
And the inherent flaw there is the retention rate.
It's terrible.
Yeah.
The vast majority of what you cram into your head just in case is completely forgotten by the time the actual real-world scenario presents itself.
It's incredibly inefficient. So to replace it, the research points to the emergence of the infinite tutor.
Yes, the infinite tutor.
This is an AI system that knows exactly what your knowledge gaps are. It doesn't waste your time giving you a broad, generic, hour-long lecture on a topic you already partially understand.
Right, it's highly targeted.
It gives you the exact missing piece of the puzzle at the precise moment you need it to solve a real problem right in front of you.
It functions as a cognitive bypass. You aren't storing the information for 10 years, you're bypassing the storage phase entirely and moving straight to application. And the implications of this are deeply rooted in educational psychology, specifically Benjamin Bloom's research.
Yes, let's pause on that, because Bloom's 2 sigma problem came up heavily in our research, and it is a massive aha moment once you grasp it. But 2 sigma sounds like a purely statistical dry term. Can you break down what that actually means for someone outside of academia?
Certainly. So in the 1980s, educational psychologist Benjamin Bloom conducted research comparing standard classroom learning to one-on-one tutoring. The term 2 sigma just refers to 2 standard deviations on a bell curve.
Okay.
What Bloom found was that students who received personalized one-on-one tutoring performed 2 standard deviations better than students in a traditional classroom.
Wait, 2 full standard deviations?
Yes. To put that in plain terms, an average student, someone sitting right in the middle of the 50th percentile, suddenly shoots up to the 98th percentile when given a dedicated tutor.
They outperform 98 out of 100 of their peers.
Exactly.
Which is an almost unfair advantage. And the problem part of Bloom's 2 sigma problem was simply that it was economically impossible to scale.
Right. Society could never afford to assign a dedicated, world-class human expert to every single student on the planet.
Until right now.
The infinite tutor model frames AI as the ultimate, infinitely patient, highly accessible one-on-one tutoring solution. It solves the scalability problem of the 2 sigma advantage,
offering that 98th percentile boost to essentially anyone with an internet connection.
which leads to a wildly disruptive outcome: the democratization of genius.
Democratization of genius.
We are looking at a scenario where a 15-year-old kid in a developing nation, armed with nothing but a cheap $50 smartphone, suddenly possesses the exact same raw analytical computing power as a PhD graduate from Stanford.
When you let the reality of that sink in, it completely dismantles the traditional gatekeeping of the professional world. The barriers to entry, the geography, the tuition costs, the institutional access, they're all flattened.
Flattened completely.
But let me challenge that flattening for a second.
Okay.
Analytical computing power is one thing. But what about life experience? What about judgment? Does a 15-year-old actually have the context, the maturity, or the emotional intelligence to use that Stanford-level analysis to build something viable? Or are they just going to generate a massive amount of high-level noise?
That is the crucial distinction. The AI provides the analytical horsepower, but the human must provide the context and the direction.
The human is the steering wheel.
Exactly. And that context gap is exactly where professionals need to focus their energy if they want to survive. The raw ability to generate code or write a legal brief is no longer a differentiator.
So what does this all mean for your actual career strategy? If traditional degrees are becoming decorative paperweights and you are competing with global teenagers wielding infinite tutors, how do you actively construct a career that doesn't get automated away by next Tuesday?
You have to fundamentally change how you build your professional identity. The blueprint for survival in this landscape is becoming what the sources call a skill stacker.
A skill stacker?
Yes. And to understand why this works, we have to look at how AI actually functions. An AI model is the ultimate hyper-focused specialist.
Right. An AI can do one specific constrained task with flawless execution. It can process a massive spreadsheet or draft a complex contract or generate a photorealistic image based on a prompt.
But where that AI completely hits a wall is in its ability to connect the dots between wildly unrelated fields. It lacks lateral thinking. It cannot independently synthesize nuanced human behavior with abstract strategic goals. That gap, the space between the isolated, hyper-specialized tasks, that is the human playground.
The human playground, that shifts the perspective from feeling purely defensive to feeling highly opportunistic.
Very opportunistic.
And we have some incredible practical examples from the text of what this skill stacking looks like. Let's look at a graphic designer. If you are a graphic designer who solely focuses on illustrating pretty images, you are going head-to-head with AI image generators, and you are going to lose that battle.
Without a doubt.
But if that same graphic designer layers on a deep understanding of behavioral psychology and then stacks on expertise in AI automation, the dynamic completely flips.
They go from being obsolete to being practically untouchable.
Because they are no longer just producing a visual asset, they are orchestrating AI to rapidly prototype designs while actively applying human psychological principles to ensure those designs actually drive user conversion or emotional engagement.
Right. No single AI specialist agent can independently navigate the friction between human psychology, aesthetic design, and automated deployment. You need the human to bridge those islands.
Let's look at another example. A lawyer. A junior associate whose entire job consists of reviewing boilerplate non-disclosure agreements is a prime target for automation.
Oh, absolutely. That job is disappearing.
But what if that lawyer stacks their traditional legal knowledge with an understanding of smart contracts and AI ethics?
That combination makes them entirely irreplaceable.
Wait, before we move on, let's clearly define what a smart contract implies in this context. For someone listening who isn't spending their weekends reading up on blockchain technology, what are we actually talking about?
Sure, it's simpler than it sounds. Think of a smart contract like a digital vending machine.
A vending machine.
Right. With a normal contract, if you pay me, a human lawyer or an escrow agent has to verify the payment and then manually release the goods. A smart contract is just code that does this automatically. If condition A is met, action B executes immediately without any human intermediary.
Okay, so if a lawyer understands how those self-executing digital contracts work, and then they layer on AI ethics, which is essentially the complex framework of how we ensure algorithms don't violate privacy laws or discriminate against people, they become a completely different kind of professional.
Precisely. They're no longer just drafting documents. They're navigating the incredibly complex intersection of automated financial execution, traditional legal compliance, and the emerging murky waters of algorithmic accountability.
Wow.
You cannot prompt an AI to navigate that level of cross-disciplinary ambiguity.
The overarching takeaway here is a profound warning against overspecialization. For decades, the career advice was always find your niche, dig deep, become the absolute expert in one tiny area.
Right, the specialist ruled the world.
But now, if you go deep into one hole, you are competing against an AI that can dig faster, deeper, and cheaper than you ever could. Instead of digging one deep hole, you need to build a wide bridge over many holes.
Beautifully put. The future belongs to the generalist. but it's a very specific type of generalist. It is someone who possesses a broad, interconnected understanding of human systems, who can then act as a director, orchestrating and leading a diverse, hyper-competent team of AI specialists.
You essentially become the CEO of your own infinite workforce. It's an incredibly empowering vision of the future. But as we zoom out, our sources take a deliberately philosophical and frankly somewhat darker turn toward the end.
They do.
Beyond the economics of jobs and degrees, there is a broader societal warning here about something called the wisdom gap.
Yes, the wisdom gap.
Yeah.
And this is arguably the most critical dimension of the entire discussion. The warning is that in an era where information, answers, and execution become instantaneous, actual wisdom becomes increasingly scarce.
Let's really dig into that. We now have tools that can tell us exactly how to do absolutely anything with just a quick text prompt.
And anything at all.
I can ask an AI to generate the code for a disruptive new app, write all the marketing copy, and deploy the entire infrastructure in a single afternoon. I know how to do it, but the wisdom gap asks, do we still know why we are doing it?
That discrepancy between capability and intent is staggering. The research uses a deeply evocative phrase to describe our current trajectory.
I love this quote.
It asks if we are rapidly becoming a civilization that wields godlike power, but possesses only toddler-like wisdom.
Godlike power with toddler-like wisdom? That perfectly encapsulates the danger of giving someone the ability to launch 10,000 personalized, persuasive marketing emails in 60 seconds without them ever questioning whether they are just polluting the digital ecosystem or manipulating vulnerable people.
Right. We are just pushing shiny buttons to see what happens.
Entirely disconnected from the long-term systemic consequences of those actions.
And this lack of wisdom makes us incredibly vulnerable. The source material leaves us on a rather ominous cliffhanger, teasing a future escalation that it refers to as the biodigital war.
The biodigital war. That sounds like the title of a sci-fi movie.
Yep.
But the reality presented in the text is much more mundane and honestly a lot more insidious.
It argues that AI is not merely a passive tool waiting for our instructions. Because these systems are increasingly integrated into platforms designed to capture our attention, they are actively hacking human dopamine pathways. They are systematically destroying our collective focus, our patience, and our capacity for the deep, sustained thought required to actually develop wisdom in the first place.
It leaves the listener with a very stark, undeniable directive. Stay sharp or stay silent.
Stay sharp or stay silent.
Meaning, if you don't actively manage your focus, if you don't aggressively protect your cognitive bandwidth to build these diverse, complex skill stacks we talked about, you won't even realize you are falling behind. You will simply be comfortably sedated by the algorithm, drowned out by the noise, and rendered entirely irrelevant in the new economy.
It's a very sobering reality check.
It really is.
So, to synthesize the journey we've taken through these sources today, we are witnessing the definitive end of the $100,000 paperweight. The era of the human being serving as a passive information storage unit has officially closed.
We look at the profound difference between the struggling student A and the hyper-efficient student B, who rejects memorization in favor of orchestration, reclaiming their time to focus on high-level human strategy.
We examine the necessary pivot from wasteful, just-in-case memorization to the targeted precision of the infinite tutor, bringing the massive advantage of Bloom's Two Sigma research to anyone willing to engage with the technology.
And we broke down the ultimate survival mechanism for your career skill stacking. The absolute necessity of combining diverse, seemingly unrelated fields like design, psychology, law, and automation to build a bridge across disciplines, rather than competing with AI at the bottom of a single, specialized hole.
Ultimately, the core takeaway for you is that your true value in this rapidly shifting landscape is no longer your ability to recall facts or execute repetitive tasks. Your enduring value lies in your capacity to be a nimble orchestrator, a broad-minded generalist who wields these incredibly powerful specialist tools with intention, context, and cross-disciplinary understanding.
Which brings us to one final thought for you to mull over as you step back into your day and look at your own professional trajectory. We spent a lot of time unpacking the wisdom gap, the terrifying reality that having instant answers does not mean we know the right direction to head. If an AI infinite tutor can instantly provide the flawless, statistically perfect answer to literally any how or what question you could possibly throw at it, then perhaps the most valuable, exclusively human skill left in the world isn't the ability to find answers at all. Maybe, moving forward, the true mark of genius will be the ability to ask the kinds of highly original, context-rich, deeply empathetic, and wonderfully weird questions that an AI would simply never think to prompt itself with. If the machines have all the answers, will the only truly valuable education of the future be learning how to ask better questions? Something to think about. Until next time.